So a very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us today at the CGS-CIMB Thoughts Leadership Series. We are honored to have with us today Deborah Henry, Elaine Daly, and our CEO, Fugee, here with us today. So let's get the session started with a welcome remark by our CEO, and then followed by the conversation between Deborah and Elaine. Just one last bit is that before we go on, let me do some housekeeping rules. If you have any questions, do drop them in the Q&A or the chat function. As for those of you who are joining us from Facebook, feel free to also leave your questions or comments, and we'll pass it on to Elaine and Deborah to actually answer it for you. So without further delay, let me just pass the floor over to Fugee. Over to you, Fugee.
Thank you, Chine. As the Quranic verse goes, whoever saves the life of one, it is as if he had saved the life of all mankind. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 8th CGS-CIMB Thoughts Leadership Series. Thought is a leadership and social impact platform for individuals to share their wealth of experience to inspire young up-and-coming talent. And through these sessions, we hope we can motivate the youth to learn more from the past, persevere now, and think better of what they can achieve in the future. The pandemic, in many ways, have humbled us and remind us to be grateful for what we have and not to take things for granted. At CGS-CIMB, we believe in the right of every person to receive help, care, and fair opportunities. And with this, close to our hearts, we have invited Deborah Henry, the co-founder of Fugee School and Fugeelah, to speak about why change starts with us, in conversation with Elaine Daly, the founder of Lead Up. We hope you will enjoy this meaningful session without taking more time, and I will pass the floor to Elaine to start the conversation. Over to you, Elaine.
Thank you very much, Fugee. Thank you for inviting me to moderate this event, this very, wonderfully put together event that we've been talking about for weeks now. Big thank you to CGS-CIMB for giving us this opportunity. So yes, thank you very much, Fugee, and I will start my questions with Deborah now. Deborah Henry, hello.
It's been a long time. We are good friends, but of course, with the pandemic, we've not seen each other so much.
Yeah, absolutely. How have you been? How's the pandemic been treating you?
I think like many of us, it's a unique experience all around. Everyone's finding different ways to cope with personal life, with their family, with their career, with a lot of, I think the fact that we feel perhaps a little bit helpless sometimes, a lot of uncertainty. These are things that humanity doesn't deal very well with. So it's been interesting. I mean, you can probably, especially with the work that I do, we've been very hands-on in working with a lot of communities on the ground, which we'll talk a lot about, I'm sure, in the next hour or so. But very happy to be here and happy to chat with you and to be part of this discussion. Thank you.
Fantastic. Before we get into your humanitarian work and what you do and stuff like that, maybe, for those who, and I'm sure a lot of people are very, very excited and interested to know about, how you started off in this industry. Maybe you can give us a little background from way back when. Just about 3 years ago.
Just a few years ago. It's like one beauty queen asking another beauty queen about like how they started social work, and I shall promise I will not say world peace. So no, but in all seriousness, developmental work is something that I was always very passionate about. I remember when I was a teenager at home and I would sit and talk to my grandparents about, in the afternoon and say, why do people suffer? Why is it that we live in a world with so much? Yet you have individuals who struggle to get the most basic things in life, water, food on their tables, their kids go to school, to be able to just live the most basic, right? When I say food on the table, I think of what's happening in Malaysia today, which is it's so unthinkable that families don't have food. And it goes to show you how desperate we get when we don't have these basic things. So it was something that was always very, it mattered to me, and I was very deeply engaged in this. And so I volunteered as a teenager. At soup kitchens when I was in university. I actually decided to study political science and economics. So that 3-year period was actually quite defining for me. I came back, I graduated with a very real sense of, yes, I'm a model. I started modeling at 15, and I moved back to Malaysia after that, and I was thinking about what was next. But I think deep within me, I realized that I wanted this part of work to be a very central part of my life. And and I guess I've been quite lucky in that I've been able to bring two very different worlds together. On one hand, it's the fashion, it's the entertainment industry, which is very, very often considered to be so, it's fast moving, it's perhaps superficial, it's opulent, it's over the top, glamorous. And then you have, and then I have this other side of the work that I do, seemingly very opposing. However, I think they've been actually very complementary in that I've been able to bring these two worlds together and make them both, I've made them work for a greater cause. So it was, I knew after university I wanted to do something, and I came back to Malaysia. I ended up joining the beauty, Miss Malaysia World, and I think it was when I took that step to join the pageant, the question I asked myself was well, now that I'm in this pageant, what do I want to use it for? It's a great platform. How can I really use this platform for something bigger than myself? And, essentially, someone gives you a voice, gives you a platform to do something. How do you use it? And so for me, that was really the beginning of when I met a refugee family living in Malaysia, less than 20 minutes from our beautiful Petronas Twin Towers. And they could not read, they could not write. And that was the moment where I said, I think this is what I need to do. It wasn't that I picked refugees over a different cause. It was just something, sometimes the universe conspires in that way. I was in that moment, and and that was the beginning of the birth really of Fugee School and now Fugee.org, our nonprofit.
Fantastic. I mean, just to bring you back a little bit, you mentioned just now that, when you were a teenager, you were always curious and you asked a lot of questions, about development and, why people suffering. You asked your grandparents that, who inculcated that in you? Was it something that, you heard from your mom and dad, or was it something that you read? What was it?
I'm not entirely.
Because not many 15-year-olds would do that.
Well, it's just so, I think some people, you're just like that. I don't really have the answer. I mean, I do definitely think my parents, we always had great dinner table conversations, sometimes great dinner table debates. But we talked about a lot of worldly issues, global issues. And so my parents made us very aware of people around the world, and that we were very blessed and very privileged. So we were definitely not living sheltered in that sense. But I do think it was just something that it was just something that triggered me, something that, I was passionate about. And I've been very blessed and privileged that I've been able to kind of be able to do it as a work, and be able to really have this kind of effect and spotlight so many issues that tend to not get enough attention.
Sure. You talked about, the merging of your modeling world and your humanitarian work. I mean, how has that helped you in what you do so far?
Absolutely. I think the fact that because you're in the entertainment industry, you get the media attention, you get the coverage. When you say something, people want to hear, and for better or for worse, right? But you do get some upper hand in a way. And so being able to use that to talk about refugees, to talk about people without food, children without an education, the environment, but in a very real and serious way. I think I felt like I actually needed to prove myself to some degree, because when I first started Fugee more than 10 years ago, it's like, oh, okay, beauty queen doing her charity work, it was that kind of thing, like, oh yeah, you're very nice, you do charity work. Yes. I don't think people really understood the degree to how involved I was, and it's not just a once a month type thing. I put a post up. It's hours of hours every day. So I think in a way, it was not say proving myself, but there was longevity there. You're doing it, you're committed to it, you talk about it. It's not when it's a hot topic, when it's not a hot topic. And I think over a period of time, yeah, people, you know, the media sees it, your partners, companies you work with, corporations. And so over time, I was able to collaborate with different brands, businesses, to be able to talk about these matters. But you also see, I think, a changing landscape in the corporate sector. Prior to this, I think everyone existed in silos. You had the corporate sector, you had CSR, then you have your charity work, and everyone kind of operated a little bit on their own. I think we're heading towards a world, especially brought on with this pandemic, where we see that we are all so deeply interconnected. You can be that wealthy, powerful individual, but this pandemic will still not leave you completely untouched. And so talk about sustainability. We talk about the fact that businesses cannot just operate on their own anymore. We can't operate on our own. Running a nonprofit has been hugely difficult. And so how do we work together in a more sort of structured, sustainable, long-term way where we all benefit? And I think more and more businesses, even nowadays, they need to kind of work with, they need to have more than a CSR department. They need to make doing good for business and good for the world. And I do think that's where a lot of the younger generation are very passionate about this, you know. They want the companies they work for, they want the people they surround themselves with to talk about ethical business, conscious business, what really matters at the end of the day. So I think it's been a kind of a combination of a lot of different factors at play here, that have kind of allowed me to play, you know, I guess play with the different sectors and bring them all together. And so we do find, like today, if you look at the logos like above you, Elaine, it's Fugee.org and Fugeelah. Fugee.org is the nonprofit, which we started 11 years ago, but Fugeelah is our social business. And
so you sorry to interrupt you. So you started, just so that our audience gets a clearer picture of Fugee.org and Fugeelah. So Fugee.org was started 10 years ago, you said 11 years ago. What kind of challenges did you have, you know, starting it? And did you start it alone, or did you start it with friends? What was the procedure like?
Yeah, so I started it with my university friend. And so we were two of us. I think we were fresh from out of university a couple of years back in Malaysia. And that's when I chanced upon this refugee families from Somalia. And I think we were so moved by the fact that how is it possible that it is the year 2008 and you have children who cannot read and write, and they're living in my country. They're living 20 minutes from our Twin Towers in a developed country. And I couldn't come to terms with that. And so we started giving them tuition for about 6 months. And then we realized it's not just one family. There are hundreds of families that need help. And so we started Fugee School with the community about the following year in 2009. So that's really how we started. We did not have a big plan. We didn't have that 5-year plan. We had no idea. We had a little bit of funding. And to be honest, I guess perhaps in our innocent selves, we thought, oh, the refugees community, they're only going to be in Malaysia for a little while. So we'll just do this for as long as they are here. Fast forward, 11 years, I know, we're still here, and the community is as big as ever. The need is as great as ever. Sometimes I feel like, has anything really changed? And that is my personal struggle, because it is a difficult subject because of the legality issues, right, of refugees in this country. So we try, we work hard, we fundraise, and what we're trying to do is really basic human rights. It's healthcare, it's access to education, it's access to work, it's understanding that people just want to live better lives. And I think maybe at this point it's kind of important to differentiate, or to make really clear the definition of a refugee, right? A lot of people think that especially in Malaysia, we use the term illegal immigrants, right? Everyone's illegal, everyone comes here, everyone wants to take from us, and that's wrong, and they should go back to where they came from. That's very often the narrative. So it's so important to understand that they're actually very different. A lot of people, like migrant workers or foreign workers who come here, they come here to earn money. So they work in, say, construction industries. They come from countries like Bangladesh, Indonesia. That is a group of people, right? But refugees are here because of persecution. Basically, their lives were under threat. They were going to get killed. They had to escape war, bombing, like in the cases of Syria, in Afghanistan, in Iraq, Palestine. So they're here out of like urgent need and necessity. And so really it's on a humanitarian basis that Malaysia should accept them and should offer them some form of refuge. That's where the word refugee comes from.
Right.
Refuge in this country. And it is temporary because Malaysia does not offer permanent homes for refugees. But my kind of big push is, while they are here, can we not allow, I'm not saying give them more, I'm saying allow for them to work and to contribute to our economy. Therefore, they're actually going to be contributing, working, putting in their blood, sweat, tears, and taking care of themselves. Right now, the way we function is everyone's living on charity dollars. And that's a really not sustainable, that's not a sustainable way to function. So just throwing that in there in terms of what the actual definition of a refugee is.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for that. But, you know, speaking about the refugees themselves, you know, I mean, how have they evolved, you know, over the past 11 years, as you've seen? What difference has happened?
Well, that's a tough one. I think a lot, but also nothing, not much. We've been pushing for refugees to be able to work legally because they are capable, they are here, and the fact is they are already working, whether you like it or not. That perhaps is considered illegal, but they are already. And so if we can bring that from the darkness into the light and manage it and monitor it, then they can work. And that's kind of the number one big push for us, to allow them to work. Unfortunately, that's not really happened. A couple of pilot projects happened, but not quite sure if it really went anywhere. The vast majority of people still can't work to earn money to take care of themselves and their families. So that's a big one that I think really needs to happen.
But they're just living off charities at the moment.
They live off charity, or they work in sectors and jobs, but it's still considered illegal, which then opens us up to exploitation, which means you as a boss could take advantage of your refugee employee by not paying them. So it also then causes other bigger problems as well, right? So that's something that hasn't really progressed as far as it should have been. Education is another one. Refugees don't have access to our kebangsaan schools. So schools like Fugee School exist that provide an education to the community.
And you've seen many of the kids, you know, graduate and make something of themselves, right, over the years. Can you just tell a little bit about what that's all about?
Yeah, it's amazing. You know, it is something really quite, you don't really understand what a teacher goes through. We always say a teaching profession is one of the most, I think, undervalued professions. But when you see a kid grow up and they blossom and they change from that child that couldn't even read or write at the age of 8 or 10, and to see them then not only just learn those skills, but to graduate from school, to graduate from university, in a Malaysian university, and have dreams and hopes for their lives, that's incredible. To know that one person has now a better chance of building a more successful life for themselves. I always remember when I first started the school, I did this little activity. I took these pieces of paper, right? And I gave them to my students with crayons. And I said, draw something, you know, let your imaginations run wild. That's what my mom did with me when I was a kid. And the kids sat there for like an hour and their papers were blank. At the end of the exercise, their papers were like this. And I was like, you know, draw a house, draw your family, draw what's your favorite pet or animal. But the pages remained blank. And I was a bit stumped at first. I was like, what's going on? Like, I mean, is it that hard to just scribble on a piece of paper? And I realized that these children, while they were very much alive, their imaginations were dead. Because of what they've gone through with the war and trauma, their minds were so dark and so closed. And so for us, it's really been, at Fugee, it's really been able to get these children to dream again, to have hope. There's nothing worse than living a life where you can't have hope for a better tomorrow. And so kids to have dreams, to have hope, to think about what their future would look like.
That's fantastic.
I think that's the biggest gift you can give someone, right?
Absolutely.
And to see them not only that as a Malaysian, to know that their time in Malaysia was not only it wasn't wasted, you know, because many of them spent not a year, they spent 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years here, and so their time in our country was not in vain, and that people cared, their lives mattered, and they were able to invest in themselves and can move on, and then can move on anywhere in the world and just build something better for themselves and their families.
It's really, really inspiring, Debs. And the kids, you know, have they gone on to university, college? Are they allowed to? Is that a part of the program as well?
Yeah, so Fugee School teaches kids from kindy all the way up to high school, right? But what happens, and that's a question we asked ourselves, what happens after they finish school? What's next, right? And for you and me and most of us watching me, we think of college, university, getting a job. For these youth, they don't have that option. And so we actually recently launched this. It's called Fugee Hired. It's a scholarship program where we basically fundraise to provide scholarships to deserving refugee youth who want to go to university and get a degree. So there are a couple of private universities that will offer placements to refugees, but it is very limited. And you need money as well, right? So that's where we come in to be able to fundraise for these youth. And they can also study online. So the big issues, the big challenges, I guess, with refugees in Malaysia is they can't work legally, can't access education easily unless you have a little bit more money. Those are the two main things here. So it does make living very, very challenging, if you can imagine. And that's why we actually started Fugeelah. So about 3 years ago, we were like, fundraising is really, really hard and we don't get the support we need. And so we were like, how do we take matters into our own hands? How do we try to become a little bit more sustainable? So Fugeelah is essentially, it's a lifestyle and accessories brand. We make jewelry, we partner and collaborate with corporate brands, with fashion brands to create products for their clients and customers. And the ultimate goal is to be able to generate a sustainable profit that we can channel towards the school to pay for children's education.
And how's that been going? I've got a couple of stuff from you.
You do. It's been an exciting process, I have to say, but like all businesses, especially in the past 2 years, it's been quite hellish. It's been really a struggle to keep things running, especially when you're a non-essential item, right? But we've been very lucky that our customers have supported us, and we've, touch wood, we're still here today. But it is very exciting because like I said earlier, I think a lot of brands are, sustainability is such a big pillar for companies nowadays. And so a lot of brands want to actually collaborate with Fugeelah to work with us to be able to come up with new products, new ideas, ways of reaching out to their customers. And I think it's a lot on shared values as well, that people want to see a lot more than just let's do a little charity event and, go to an orphanage, give kids like a free meal, and then we feel better about ourselves. It needs to be a lot more than that. We need to, I think for us, it's investing in today for a better tomorrow, right? And that's something I think we struggle with, especially in charity. We want instant on-demand results, and that doesn't happen, especially within education. The results you see sometimes the next generation. So really investing in today for future outcomes and benefits that are felt by generations to come.
Okay, we've got a question here by Tengku Sheila asking, how many people do you have at the school now?
So we have about 200 students from the ages of 4 all the way up to 18. We do have about 150 more children who are on our wait list, but we just don't have the capacity to take them right now. So that's in Fugee School, but we also have then our youth programs where we have an online platform where we provide access to all refugee youth in Malaysia. And then, like I said, we have our scholarship, which we've launched to help. So we're all about connect right now, especially with the pandemic. It's really online learning, it's connectivity. It's if students can learn online from anywhere in the world, they can potentially also get jobs anywhere in the world. They're not restricted and limited to just Malaysia. So we've been, to date, we've educated through Fugee School, we've had over 500 students come through our doors.
So now, because of the pandemic, you are doing it online.
Yes, that's right.
How's that working out?
Surprisingly, it's been actually quite good for us. We've got an amazing team of teachers, and we were able to transition really well online. The challenge, I think, is with our students, because they live in, very often a lot of them in a very small space, and they share these tiny little gadgets and tablets.
Yeah, I was just about to ask about the gadgets, whether, they actually have access to tablets or, any gadget, so to speak.
Tablets and phones, pretty much. No one really has a laptop. So tablets and phones, they have to share them with their siblings. So we do the best we can, but our attendance rate has been well over 90% throughout the past year. And we just finished our exams this recently. So we're, I think for us, very importantly, it's, I was talking to my team a couple of days ago and saying, because we're doing a lot of food aid right now, right? So we've been raising funds and we've been giving food aid out to everyone, Malaysians, refugees, migrants, whoever in need. And food is so important. Like, imagine not having food on your table or food to give your kids, right? Nobody wants to feel hunger pangs. It's something one can only imagine to be really horrible. But what about a kid without an education? What is that? What does that feel like? And so we were talking about this with the team and saying, children right now are cooped up at home. And even from what I saw when I was in Lebanon, I visited refugee camps, Syrians living in refugee camps. And I visited this school made out of a tent. And what I realized was it's education it's what's important beyond the math and the science and the English at times like this is the routine for children. It's a child wakes up, and you're a mom, Elaine, I'm sure to some degree you're like, yes, having the kids having something to do. But waking up and having routine, having something to look forward to, even if it's saying hi to your friend on a camera, it matters so much, especially for their mental health. Because children often, they suffer in silence. You don't really hear from them when they're going through tough stuff. They keep quiet. So for us, keeping kids in school and connected right now is more important, or as important as food, because of that. And so that's why we've been reaching out to our donors and supporters saying, no, you still have to give to us to pay for the education of kids. We still need to fundraise, because I get it that food is important, but if these kids can't go to school, they're going to go through suicidal, depressive, mental health things. The families can't cope, especially when you're talking about vulnerable communities.
Important thing is to have structure and to have something for them to look forward to every day, isn't it?
Yeah.
What would you describe as being one of the biggest challenges? I mean, having, for you to go through?
As in now, or sort of just over?
For Fugee.
It's, to be honest, it's feeling after 11 years that, like, I feel like I'm saying the same thing 11 years later. I feel like I'm still, what I've said to you, I feel like I'm still talking about that. And it's been more than a decade. And
why do you think that's so?
And part of me is like, am I really having to sit here talk about that, an education and why it's important, or why a refugee needs to be given some, you know what I mean? And that it's frustrating, it's tiring, because everyone who I meet who comes to Fugee schools and sees what we're doing, they get it. They understand that, yeah, of course this kid's life matters. Of course, we don't want to see somebody die from a bomb in their country, or a girl, because she's a girl, not be able to go to school in the case of, say, Afghanistan. People get it. But then, I don't know, when it comes to then feeling that somebody is taking what's yours and giving it to a foreigner, people tend to things go a bit haywire. And I think that part for me is a struggle, because we have to not only try to communicate what we're doing, and justify it in a way, it's then also fundraise on top of it, and to ask people for money, to get people to want to support what we're doing.
Is that your biggest challenge that you're going through right now?
Right now, fundraising is a huge one, and that's what I was saying earlier. Like, if refugees could work, if we could come up with some framework that allows them to work, then I'm going to have to fundraise for as much, because they have a job. They can pay for their food. They can pay for their family. My role as a nonprofit, as Fugee, maybe then is more specific to certain things. So I do think that's a really important question, and that's like, hopefully someone watching us today, but it's that.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, no, but those are the people that really, you guys are the voice, because if we don't talk about this, the change will never happen. And when you see it sometimes in social media where people go, you see these like very negative xenophobic ads that talk about not wanting foreigners. Yeah. And I sometimes wonder, is that what most Malaysians think? Or is that some Malaysians? So sometimes the loudest voices in the room are not necessarily the right ones or the kind ones.
Well said, Deborah, well said. This initiative that you've done, how has it changed your life?
Oh, I mean, I think it is my life. I don't even know if it's changed my life. It's so yeah.
It's like you lead two different lives, the glamorous side and this side.
I think this stuff gives me it gives me something which I think the other work can't give me. And it keeps I think for me it keeps my feet on the ground. Keeps things real. It gives you perspective on a lot of things. What really matters and is important at the end of the day, I think. And because I'm very close to the work I do, I'm with the community, we work very closely together, the stories, the people that reach out to me, it's also real that, you can't, it's very much a part of you. Sometimes it's learning, you know, you talk about work-life balance, sometimes it's learning how to also, do you draw the line, because it's very emotionally draining and it takes a lot of a toll, right? So
I was just about to ask you about that. I mean, are there days where you wake up and you go like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? What have I done? Do you have days like that?
Yeah, I mean, especially in the past year, you know, the past year has been like calls of desperation. Please guys, can you help? We need to fundraise. If not, the school can't stay open. You know, I've never had to do that before. Desperate phone calls from suicidal people, people who can't feed their children, families that are going to be evicted because they can't pay rent. It's all kinds of stories, right? And then it also makes me imagine, like, I've not seen my family in so many years. I have family all over the world, and we can't see each other and we feel it. Imagine if you're a refugee and you've not seen your parents or your siblings in 10 years. What does that feel like? You know, so.
And do they have a certain amount of counseling that they go through and stuff like that?
Yeah, so and this is where access comes into place, right? So what are the numbers you can call? Do you have a nonprofit? Like in the case of Fugee, we work so closely with the community. They reach out to us. If they have a need, they can call one of my team, and we try and come up with a solution. We try and be there for them, right? So a nonprofit like ours, we're not just a school. We're not just an education provider. We are very much a lifeline. It's the food. I need food. I need medicine. It's a mom who's going to give birth. And
you are a lifeline.
Yeah, it's literally like we're like a mini government. I say that because these communities, they don't have a government to look for. You know, Malaysians, we have a safety net to some degree that catches us when we fall. We hope, but for refugees, there isn't that. So if you're down and out, who's going to come to your rescue? Who's going to come to your help?
We have a question here from Nicole Tan. Hi, Deborah. For children or particularly young girls who has been traumatized as a refugee victim, how do you help them to move on to be mentally strong?
So I think it involves a lot of elements. I mean, it's a great question. So through experience, being part of a community and having a support system. I think a support system is so important for young girls and also young boys. And I'll talk about the boys in just a little bit, but even for young girls, it's people that care for you, that care for you, that value you. And with that, you feel more important and you feel that there are people actually out there who want to see me succeed. So having champions in your life. Another thing is also tackling what is that root cause of the trauma and the problem. It could be a variety of issues. If it is something that's more psychological and a serious mental health issue, then you need the right kind of support and work. If it is a trauma that can be worked through with counselors, then what does that look like? And we've had students who, for example, used to cut herself. girls who felt very alone and that they didn't get the support from their families. There was a cultural divide. Girls who felt too stupid to stay in school, things like this, you know. So it's really taking it day by day, for them to know that they have the support, that we are all here for them, and to show it to them day to day. And very often that you're not going to see a transformation overnight, but slowly, surely, they build themselves up. And I always say confidence builds confidence, you know. It's sometimes the very little things that you do that give you that little bit of a push, that little bit more strength to be able to do the next thing and to do the next thing. So that's a super important thing. And opportunity, something that we've done at Fugee School is, as much as we give the support, we also give the exposure and opportunity. You know, when a girl is learning, for example, how to be confident and to speak, when she gets an opportunity to public speak in front of, you know, an event or a launch, she goes, oh my God, I did it, wow. And people clap for her and people come up to her and say, you were amazing. And, you know, that builds her self-esteem. And then the next time, the next opportunity, she does better. So it's really a combination of support, a support system around the student. And in the case of boys, very often we forget boys, but in this community that we work with, the boys, because a lot of the families don't have a father figure. And so the boys, as soon as they become sort of teenagers, all the burden of being a father gets dumped on them. And they have this, you're the male and the responsibility of a male. And they're just kids. They have no clue. And so it manifests really weirdly in them. And then they end up maybe exuding like aggression, or they become a bit violent, or they're not stable themselves. And so
they think that's how it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So for them also, it's super important to get the right support.
Okay, I think we've got more questions here. Hi, Deborah. What is your advice for those who want to follow in your footsteps as a leader who can bring change to the community?
Well, I think we can all be, we talk about being change makers, and especially in a country like ours right now, with all the fun stuff happening. We shall not go into detail. But we all have to be, and that's the title, Why Change Starts With Us. We all have to be the change maker in our community. And we talk about communities, we talk about then our schools, our countries, our continents, the world, right? It has to start with you. And it's like a couple of years ago when I was moderating the Obama Foundation when they came down, right? And that's exactly what the Obamas are focused on. It's creating change makers within communities, because even they, as amazing or as great as they are as the Obamas, you can't change the world. You know, it takes every individual to change their environment that they live in. And so I think more so now than ever before, when we look around at our nation, we have to move on from being keyboard warriors. I'm just gonna say it. There's a time and place to kind of go on your Facebook and Instagram, but there's also a role that we need to play. There's no point championing the environment if you put your window down and throw rubbish onto the road, right? If you want more from your leadership, how do you be a better leader in your company, in your home? How do you teach your kids to be better leaders? Because they are the ones that are going to then be future leaders, right? So I think sometimes we look at it so big and it becomes like, I need to start a nonprofit and I need to you don't, not everyone needs to. And sometimes you need the change to be in whatever you're doing right now. But I would say
things that you're doing even. Yeah.
Absolutely, because I really believe it starts with this. Change starts in your mind. It's a mentality shift. It's seeing people do things differently. And going, ooh, look at that. What just happened there? And you see this in your company structure. You see this in your home setting, within family, within friends, and being able to have a light bulb moment that then you take and make it your own, right? So, so I think that I really believe strongly in that. But I do think if it's someone who's really interested in starting a nonprofit, you really are committed. It is a huge commitment. It requires a lot of funding, a lot of passion, a lot of dedication. You can't just pay someone to do the job. It doesn't work like that. Really get experience first. Don't come in with a solution when you don't know what the problem is. Always try to understand the problem, speak to the community you're trying to help, put yourself out there, volunteer, and then once you understand what you're actually trying to do, you'll be able to come up with sort of a solution that actually works together with the community. This is something that I was thinking about a while ago. When we talk about empathy, empathy is a great, not just to feel and to empathize with people, but empathy is a great way to problem solve. Because it's when you empathize with something, you're able to really, I'm able to understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel your pain, I feel your problems. And so when I help you, my help is much more effective, if that makes sense.
Hang on one second. Yeah. Thank you, Debs, for that. You've been inspiring us so much so far. I mean, I just want to ask you, what about some unforgettable moments that that you've had doing the work that you do?
Wow, unforgettable. So it's trying to think of them. I mean, graduations are always like, those are big like moments for me when I see my students be able to like,
I'm sure, yeah.
He was like 6 years old and now like is taller than me and is like, I don't know, graduating from like, I just got a message from this boy, Ahmed, and we helped him get into a Malaysian university and this, and you know, he had some struggles and we, you know, were there to support him. And he's like messaged me last week and said, oh, I'm graduating from university in a couple of weeks. I wish it's going to be online because of COVID, but I wish it was in person and, you know, for you to be there. And you're like, wow, something that we take for granted. Like both of us went to uni, we graduated. I don't think it was not a big deal in a way, but you know, for some people out there, it's the biggest deal. And this will change his life. He could be the first kid in his family to graduate. You know what I mean?
And you've given them this opportunity. So pat on your back. Yeah.
And we've been able to be part of that journey, which is amazing. But also another experience I had was because a lot of the community we work with is from Somalia. So a couple of years ago, I had the opportunity to visit Somalia.
Oh, and nice.
Somalia is considered to be one of the most dangerous places on earth.
Yes.
Mogadishu, the capital city, it's very sad. It's so stunningly beautiful, but it's like a war zone. And we had bulletproof vehicles pick us up from the airport, armed guards. We couldn't go anywhere. We couldn't do anything. I didn't see, I was just stuck in my hotel. My hotel had like a bomb shelter. It had like a bulletproof wall. It was insane. It was quite the experience. But visiting this country, Somalia, and then understanding how these Somalis have come to Malaysia as for refuge really helps you understand the whole dynamic a little bit. I'm not going to turn around and say, yeah, Somalis, go back to your country. Do you know what I mean? Having seen their home, having seen what happened. Because 2 weeks after I came back, there was a bomb explosion on the road that my car went on.
Oh my gosh.
You know what I mean? It kind of puts things
in perspective, yeah. We have a question here. Hi, Deborah. How do you convince and influence other people to support your work?
I think I said a little bit earlier, it's been longevity. It's been time. I think sometimes when you start talking, people are like, who are you? Like, what do you know about this? Are you for real? What do you have to say? So people are a little bit cagey at first. Just because we've been doing this for so long now. I think for me, now what I do is not to convince people of anything. I just talk about what matters. I talk about what I think is right and just. I talk about what is humanity, what is compassion for people, and what the right thing is. And so if people
tell people to want to believe in what you do and support the work that you do, right?
Yeah, and what's been really heartening to see recently is with this recent food aid, the white flag movement that was initiated. We were doing food aid since last year, and then the whole thing kind of blew up again a couple of month or so ago, where it was just this huge surge of people just not having food on their tables. Just to see the kind of outpouring from people, I would say Malaysians, whoever, foreigners, people who called Malaysia home for so long, the outpouring of support was, it makes my hair stand, because it was like, people just gave so freely and openly. They didn't ask questions. They didn't care who you were giving to, Malaysian, not Malaysian, race, religion, all of that. It didn't matter. They gave on a purely humanitarian position. And I think that's it. That's what Malaysians have in us. And we have it there. we need to hold on to this. I think after this thing is over, we need to not slowly make our way back into those tinted lenses of race, religion, gender, communities. We need to hold on to then, when you help all, because we're all in this at the end of the day. So yeah.
Well said, well said. We've got another question here. As a successful beauty queen, model, and humanitarian, wearing all hats and responsibility as a woman, how do you deal with all the pressures, especially when you were competing in pageantry in Miss Universe Malaysia, both locally and internationally?
I knew there had to be one of those questions slipped in there. I think everything prepares you for the next stage in life. And I think, Elaine, you probably agree with me, right? It's for us, standing on a stage, public speaking, being in the limelight, being a beauty queen, all of this, it's a degree of preparation, it's nerves, anxiety. It is pressure to be able to deliver, to be able to live up to a certain standard. But at the end of the day, I don't know, for me, it's yourself, right? It's what you believe in yourself, what you believe in, and why you believe you're there, and what it's for. So you always give 100% of what you can do.
But how do you deal with the pressure, though?
And to realize,
you always seem a very cool and collected person, not someone who gets flustered easily or anything like that. How do you deal with the pressure?
My occasional rants on social media sometimes. It's the biggest challenge, I think, in this industry is that, when I used to be an athlete, right? So I used to run. When you run the 100-meter race, the gun goes off, you're in your lane, and your head's up, and you sprint towards the finish line. You win or you don't, right? You get first or you get second or you don't. But it's just who's the fastest runner. It's not a subjective matter, right? Whereas when you're in a beauty pageant, like at Miss Universe, and you're standing on the stage and there's 100.
Never up to you.
It's never up to you, and I think a lot of my life it's never been up to me. Like when we get jobs, endorsements and ambassadorships, when someone chooses you, you're literally like one of the options on this clothes rack. And it's like, do I want the red dress, the pink dress, the blue dress? And if they pick you, they pick you. If they don't, they don't. How do you learn to not take that to heart? How do you make it not personal? And how do you realize at the end of the day, it's just a job? There's only so much you can do, especially when it comes to your appearance. I can't change myself more than I can. I can't be something for everybody else, because you will lose yourself. So for me, it's just, I can't. It'll drive you crazy. You just got to be yourself. And
accept, right?
And accept it. It took me a while to get there, though. I mean, in my early 20s, I had massive issues. I was modeling and I used to starve myself. And I was like, I have to be skinny. I have to be skinny. I have to be skinny. I didn't, everything was about how I looked. That was my value of getting my next job. And then eventually, as you grow and mature, you learn that there's so much more, and your validation is in other things. You need to find that. If you're in a position where I think like you're feeling that your validation is not coming from what's right, then you need to start thinking about that. But pressure, we all go through pressure. So it's learning when to take a step back for your own sake. And then pressure can be a good thing at times, right? It pushes us to do more, to be more as well. So we all have different, I think don't compare yourself to others, because we all have a very different threshold for these things. And finding what works for you, I guess.
Fantastic. Coming back to the work that you do, since we have so many B40s in Malaysia, why refugees and not help the locals? I have a question here for you.
Yeah, I mean, this is a question that I get asked to the point where I'm like, I just, from a personal perspective, my mom's not Malaysian, my dad is, my mom is Irish. I don't know how to pick one side. I don't know how to choose one thing. I grew up in a very multicultural family. So I don't see it in that lens. I don't see it as Malaysians and others. And, it doesn't, in my mind, that just doesn't exist in that sense. That's one. And secondly, like I said earlier, I think it was a calling for me. I ended up meeting this refugee family, and that was
That spurred it on.
that was where I was meant to be, and that spurred it on. Just as much as I'm not going to question someone who wants to help, stray dogs or stray cats, or someone who wants to save the whales or the dolphins. I'm not going to turn around to them and say, why save the whales when you can save children? I mean, do you know what I mean? Everything is important.
And it's your calling, right?
Yeah, everything's important and connected. And like I said, when we did our food aid, we gave food to everybody, not just refugees. So when we can, as an organization, we're all about everybody working together. And actually, I think it's even more important, because the more Malaysians and refugees actually do more together, you learn and you grow with each other. And you don't exist in these separate categories. So so we do as much as we can, but like I said, we have limited resources, and no one cares about the refugees except for the nonprofits and some corporate partners. So, and the UN, of course, here. So we cannot rely, there is no government for them to rely on to take care of them. So that's where it is imperative, I think, for us to stand in that gap.
Yeah, and you've definitely made an impact, for sure, over all these years. Given that, it's tough to raise funds for these refugees, have you ever thought of giving up?
I mean, yeah, it took a lot. I mean, I don't know if you saw the video I put up on my Instagram a few months ago. I've never done that before. And I think people who know me know that I don't, that's not a thing I like to do. But we've always been very lucky that we've been able to fundraise. But that was a sheer, like, guys, please help, because I don't know how to keep the school open. We have 200 students. We have, we're trying to run all these really cool programs. Families can't afford to pay school fees. We charge 30 ringgit to 50 ringgit a month in school fees, and some families can't afford to pay it. So we have teacher salaries to pay. We hire refugees as well. We have a huge cost to run the school. And it was a real desperate plea for people to please, hey, could you help us? Because we can't do this anymore alone. So yeah, it's definitely come to the point where you just feel tired sometimes, and you feel like, I mean, 11 years later, I'm still having to justify why an education matters to a child, for a child's welfare. And you still have to deal with people who say, help Malaysians first. There are many companies, there are many foundations out there who still do not give funds to non-Malaysians.
Right. So
you don't even get to apply for the grant, which is why we have to look outside of Malaysia for a lot of our support. So really, it's asking,
getting support from outside Malaysia.
We do. But it's harder work, because they don't know you. So you need to get in touch with them. You need to introduce yourself. It's this whole, thing, right?
Getting to know the process again.
Yeah, and they have to trust you because they're giving you funds or support, right? So even to all of you guys tuning in, it's how can you in your capacity start, you're empowered to start fundraisers. My goal is to get 10 students education sponsored for a year. If you go to our website, fugee.org, there's a donate now button where you can, 50 ringgit a month. See how you guys can crowdfund that kind of funds to support the education of children. There are so many ways that an individual can actually trigger this, sort of like giving, right? Crowdfunding and stuff like that. So yeah, so I do think as Malaysian individuals, people are hugely generous and charitable, and people have been giving so much through Fugee to give to the community in the past few months. So it's just that this is getting that sort of the long-term support for us is difficult sometimes.
Okay. Well, speaking about, each person making a change, how does one join your efforts in this charity organization? The question by Chi Wah Tai.
So under normal times, I mean, volunteering, teaching, organizing activities and programs for their students is great. If you're in a college, university, and your company, start a fundraiser, and not just a one-off thing. How can you do it every year? How can you raise funds to support the education of a classroom over a few years?
How it can be sustainable, right?
Yeah. Talk about it with your friends. Sponsor another student to go to university. Like, how amazing is that to say we help fund a fellow friend graduate from university. That's an amazing way to support someone. They always say education is the biggest gift you can give someone. So that would be a great thing. But also you can go to Fugeelah because we do these beautiful jewelry accessories. So, you know, great ways, great ways when you're buying your mom a gift, you're buying friends a gift. If you're going to spend the money anyway, spend it with a brand where there is a social impact. So you're kind of killing two birds with one stone.
Fantastic. What advice would you have for people who are struggling to decide which social impact strategy to pursue?
Ooh. Which social impact strategy, meaning like?
Meaning which organization or, you know, which social enterprise?
I think so. I think it really matters on what their interest is. Like I said, if you're not sure, then don't start it yet. Get more experience, volunteer, visit organizations, social enterprises, see what they're doing. You want to know there's a gap there's a gap in the sector for what you're trying to do. It is a lot harder. At the end of the day, it is starting a business, so it's not going to be easy. You need to have that kind of like long-term, dig your heels in and make it work kind of attitude. But yeah, you know, put yourself out there, I would say. Travel, experience, really take it all in. Speak to the people who you're trying to help. They often know the problem the best, and they sometimes know the best solutions. So communicate with them before you come up with like a way. But it's so important to change, I think, this charity mindset, moving away from like, oh, I want to do charity and help somebody. You want to always be able to like help them to a point where then they will help themselves. So that's kind of always the goal, to never have someone dependent on you forever. And that's why it's the things like the long-term investments, like in education, helping someone start a business, helping someone learn new skills. We always say give someone a help up, not a handout. Handouts are always temporary. A hand up is always the way you elevate someone to live a better life.
Cool. In Malaysia, what is the number of refugees and where are they from actually?
So we have registered with UNHCR close to 200,000. I think it's about 170, 180,000. You still have a lot more who are in the process of being registered with UN or haven't been registered with UN.
Okay.
And majority of the refugees do come from Myanmar. So various different Myanmar ethnic groups, as well as the Rohingya community. That's, I think, over 90%. And then the balanced refugees come from countries like Afghanistan, Iraq, Iran, Palestine, Pakistan, Somalia, South Sudan.
Right. Just so that people know and the demographics of it all, you know, and where they come from and stuff like that. Those who want to, you know, help out these refugees. We've got another question here. Deborah, what is your opinion on starting your own brand or business and use that platform to fund the humanitarian work in addition to other fundings?
Well, that's what I'm kind of doing with Fugeelah, right?
Yeah.
Are they asking? I mean, if they're asking if that's a good idea, like for them to do, it is. I mean, and maybe could even be, you know, for Fugeelah, we're fashion and lifestyle accessories. We're more, you know, we're a very small business right now. But you know, you could look at it as any brand, any business you run can have a very, very strong social impact. So it could be a bank. It could be a legal firm. It could be an advertising company. It could be an education, like a college, university, educational institution. It could be anything. Anything you do and start, if you want, can actually have a very strong do-good DNA in it, where it's a percentage of profits, annual profits that go to social good. It could be all your employees have to give voluntary hours, and not just volunteer at an orphanage, but actually donate their skill set. So you volunteer whatever you're good at, your skill set and expertise, you donate that to nonprofits and charities out there. So I would encourage you guys to look at where you are right now. If you're in college or university, of course, you're kind of going out into the big world. But if you're in a job or in a position, look at what you're doing and see what you can do that's a way of galvanizing, mobilizing your network, your contacts, who you work with, and create something that's sustainable towards a cause. that you're passionate about.
And you feel that Fugeelah has helped you in a lot of ways?
Yeah, Fugeelah has been interesting because we have donated money to Fugee School over the past few years. Quite a decent amount. I think the numbers, I think more than 70,000 ringgit in the past few years. We've donated to Fugee School.
Awesome.
But I think it's also been an interesting sort of advocacy exercise, because customers buy our products and they like our jewelry, and then they go, oh wait, there's actually a social impact, like you guys actually helping, or the girls made the jewelry, or you're helping kids get an education. So I think we're also educating people, which is super important. And some people buy the product just because they like it. They maybe don't even care about the social impact. But I think we get our message out there in a different way that's not like just charity,
Yeah.
And the thing is, people also want to spend, they want to get something back from what they spend. So they're buying something, you're going to buy a nice necklace, and you know that there's a next layer of impact to it. I think that's what people like as well. So we always say, make your dollars count for more. Choose how you spend. You say it's your money, you have the power to decide where you spend it. So choose wisely, right?
And what's next for Fugeelah? What do we see? We've got accessories, we've got bags, we've got t-shirts, I think, right?
Yeah. Well, we're not going to try to expand too much, I think. I mean, right now, this year, it's just, keeping things going. We've actually, we made these really cool new chains, necklaces this year with like Arabic writing. And we have our very famous La necklace, where the famous Malaysian La slang word. So we've done some fun and new things this year. And we collaborated with a Malaysian actress, Siti Saleha, earlier this year. So so we're quite happy with what we've done. I think it's just getting more people to know about the brand, more people to buy, support us. And we have another collaboration with Kunhui coming out hopefully later this year. So
another one.
Yeah.
So nice. I've already got the bag. What's this one? You can't tell us yet.
It's a work in progress.
Okay. Okay. And for people who don't know, where can they purchase or buy any of these Fugeelah stuff?
Yeah, it's fugeelah.com. We're it's all online. You can shoot us a message if you have any questions, and we're deliveries are pretty fast. So.
Okay, well, we're going to come to a close very soon. Let me check if there are any more questions. Okay, we've got one from Nicole Tan. As a woman, we can be emotional and fragile at times. How do you counter particularly toxic and hurtful criticisms that can be damaging to your well-being physically and internally?
Well, I mean, I think whether you're a man or woman, I think firstly, if anything is toxic, it's toxic, period. If people cross the line in the things that they say about your physical self, it's insulting and it's offensive, I think, gender aside, that shouldn't be tolerated, and it will hurt, and it is wrong. So depending on your situation you're in, you need to be smart about how you remove yourself from that situation or seek some form of support, right? But and this is something that I think in the corporate sector, in the working world, women are seen as being, soft, fragile, vulnerable, weak sometimes, and men are sort of the big kind of sturdy, burly ones. And very often then women try to feel that they need to be like men or become men. I need to be strong and this and that. I really firmly believe in fully embracing our femininity. And that is not one type. It's the spectrum of whatever that is, whatever it means to be a woman, because there is no one woman either. We all come in different shapes and sizes. I'm not the same as Elaine. Elaine is not the same as the lady who asked the question. So embrace yourself in that sense. But in a work setting, of course, it's looking at the company culture, I think, is very important. What is the sort of company you work for, or the organization that you're in? How does that function? How does that run? Do you have opportunity to have conversations with your bosses, with your peers? What do you have those kind of opportunities, right? Versus a situation where it's more top heavy and a power struggle. So I do think it's important to kind of analyze these aspects as well and determine what is really wrong, and what are elements then that you have to kind of find a way to be able to adjust and adjust to be able to handle. But we're all, Elaine, myself, we're all in situations where, I'm sure, Elaine, you can share, you were put into tough spots where you are pushed against the wall and you have to think about, how do I handle this? What is the best decision? Being emotional is never really a positive thing. So whether it's crying on one hand or getting very angry and violent or emotional, being super emotional will not help you solve it anymore. It's really good to take a step back, to talk to trusted people that you really that you can trust, and they are good confidants, and be able to really talk it out and to see what is a sort of a logical, rational best step forward, right?
Well said, Deborah, well said. We have another question here from an anonymous attendee. How much does it cost per year to run the school based on the existing capacity in an ideal yet realistic scenario?
So the school can cost, in a month, for example, the school can cost anything from about 20,000 to, 20 to 30,000 a month. And this is looking at your overheads, it's looking at, certain degrees of depreciation, it's looking at your salaries. Obviously, being a school, your big cost will be your human resource, right? Your teachers. You need a strong group of teachers for the students. And then if you've got teaching resources, educational materials, things like that. So at a bare minimum, you're looking at about that amount, which
about 20 to 30,000.
Yeah, per month.
Okay. This is what I wanted to ask you as my last question. What do you want to achieve in 10 years from now? But someone's already beat me to it.
Oh gosh, I have no idea. Asked me this 10 years ago and I would have said, would I be here? In terms of this, I really want change. I want change. I want to not be sitting here talking to you in 10 years going, education really matters. I really want, I want communities to be able to just have better access, and then organizations like Fugee can be doing other dynamic things too. So because there will always be people in need, right? So we can be doing more dynamic things. I'm very passionate about an education. Like I said, these things really matter to me. So personally, I want to be able, I see myself, Fugee.org, a foundation, doing more, starting more in different programs for all individuals when it comes to education. That is something I'd love to start, a foundation, and then be able to, whatever I do, to be able to channel it towards really investing in people so that they can live more dignified lives. I think that's a big thing. But for me, it's doing it through a more sustainable means. So that for me is looking at what that sustainable means can be, right?
And you say that change begins with us, so we've got to start doing it immediately, right?
Start doing it. If we sit, I think we see it very clearly now. If we sit and we look to our leaders, we look to our country, we look to somebody else to do what we think is the right thing. I don't know how long you're going to be sitting there till you're old and gray. So, so it's got to be you. It's got to be me. Not saying everyone needs to be a politician and take on the woes of the world, but I'm saying in your capacity, start walking the talk, start making little changes in what you do, and start expecting it of people, right? Talk about it, expect it. You say you're anti-racism.
Someone's phone is ringing. I'm sorry.
Do you have, we talk about being anti-racist. It's like, are you racist in your organization? Do you hire well? Do you see racism around you and do you keep quiet, or do you speak up against it? So I think we all have to, I'm not saying we want to cancel culture. We don't want to be like attacking each other. We want to do it out of a place of compassion, but we need to step up and do that. So, and especially I really think the Malaysian young voice, we are not We are not our parents. We are not the generation that's in front of us, or behind us rather. It is really for us to what is the Malaysia we want to live in?
Yeah.
What is the Malaysia you want to live in? And make that happen, right? And that is really it.
Do you have any parting words for us? And before we end this fantastic little talk, little chit chat that we've been having for the past hour.
Well, no, I feel like I've sort of said pretty much. We kind of talked about so many things. But I guess I would close it with one of my favorite. I talk about Nelson Mandela's quote almost every session. And he says, "An education is the most powerful weapon which we can use to change the world." And it is. We invest so much in other things, and we don't invest in what really matters. And that's really where change lies. So, you want to change the world? It starts with an education. Boys and girls.
We've got one more last question here. How is funding obtained? Is it open collect or YBB Tuan Malaysia constant contribute? How is funding obtained?
So we fundraise various different, and you have a full fundraising strategy, right? So you as an individual can go to the website and donate 50 ringgit. You can become a monthly donor. Corporations donate to us out of CSR. We have grants from international organizations. We work with global partners. We apply for all forms of grants, startup grants. And funding is obviously in cash, but also in kind. So you have companies that donate gadgets to us, books to us, things like that. People also volunteer their time. So you got to have a very wide funding strategy. Under non-COVID times, you do fundraising dinners and lunches, and you sell items. So, yeah.
That's how you get your funding done.
It works.
Well, Deborah, thank you so much for being part of this CGS-CIMB thoughts. You are very, very inspiring. I've known you for many years, and I look up to you, to what you've done, for the refugees in Malaysia. You inspire us with your work and the things that you do outside your work as well. We love your exercise videos that you put up on Instagram. So yeah, thank you. And thank you all for watching. Thank you for being an audience. Thank you for your questions. And if you've got any questions, I'm sure Deborah, you can contact Deborah on Facebook or Instagram and, ask her anything you may want to ask her. So yeah, thank you very much, CGS-CIMB, for having us do this. It's been a pleasure. And I've learned a thing or two, and I'm inspired, being part of this in this whole hour with Deborah Henry. So thank you. Thank you very much, Debs.
Thank you. Thanks, Elaine. It was great chatting. The hour has flown by. And thank you guys. And thank you guys for listening in, for taking the time. And I hope that what we've shared has, given you a little bit more insight or something to think about. And happy to always communicate on social media if you have anything else.
Perfect. Back over to you, Chiming.
Thank you so much, Elaine. Thank you so much, Deborah and Elaine, for being here today. So it looks like we are at the end of our discussion today. So on behalf of Ruzi and everyone in CGS-CIMB, would like to thank both Deborah and Elaine for this meaningful and enlightening conversation. And we also want to say a big thank you to all participants for the enthusiasm and warm engagement and support. So we hope that this session has opened our minds to a wider societal landscape in Malaysia, and we urge everyone to give a helping hand where possible, as a simple act of kindness that goes a long way. And as Deborah says, you do not need to start an NGO to do good. Change starts with us, right? The little things that you do will affect everything around you, right? So to Deborah, may your wish and achievement in 10 years come true. And we wish that everyone is safe and comfortable staying at home with the current experience, and we look forward to seeing you in many more thought series to come. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.